Hey class, what's going on? This is Mr. G going over coil vase. It's a project that I've done in my class over several years, and going over some tips, tricks, and things that you need to know about making a coil vase in class. Alright, so one of those big things about making a coil vase is and I tell my students even, it's monotonous. You're having to sit there and roll out these stacks of coils, but pre-prep is essential. So I've got my sketch pad here. I'm going over a couple things in it. Number one, just going over the size and the specs of what I'm asking for in my project. Now for me, I'm asking my students to make a 10-inch vase, so it's 10 inches in height. They have exterior alterations, and they're showing some sort of personal attributes that they're putting on the piece to show that personal voice. Now for me, seeing that personal voice from my students is a definitive, like, how are they creating their style, how are they creating what they want to say about a piece, what they want to bring to the table. Now when you're going into starting a coil vase, you first got to take a chunk of clay out of the bag or wherever the clay is stored, put it into a square, then turn it into a ball and start rolling out those coils. So once you roll out those coils, start off with a pinwheel for the base, smooth out that pinwheel, and then on the back, don't forget, put your initials on there. Now after that, you're going to start building the coils around to bring the height of the vase and start getting that size component in there. But make sure that as you're doing that and as you're going up all those individual levels, you are smoothing out a little bit at a time. So over here, building that pinwheel for the base, that bottom, and notice how as I'm rolling out that clay, adding those pieces together, I'm smoothing out that one side. Now for me, I smooth out, just kind of tie all those coils together, start with a generalized smoothing of the overall piece, then smooth the nice and buttery smooth on the top there. Again, go ahead and at this stage, go ahead and put your initials in the base of the piece. Now, not on the smooth side, do it on the coil side. Now you can smooth out each side. That's actually perfectly fine. No issues there. Now, as you guys are going to putting the coils around and bringing that structure of the vase up, as I'm setting the coil onto that base, I'm going to set it on and press it down with my thumb just on the interior just a little bit. Reason I do that is so that I go ahead and start getting the two pieces of clay to touch and start pushing those pieces together to ensure that there is a proper seal. Now as you're going up and you're making, and I do this probably every 2-3 coils at the max, as soon as you put down like 2 or 3 coils, go ahead and pause, put all those pieces together on the inside. That way you're not stuck at like a 10-foot high vase and then all of a sudden you didn't join all of those coils. I've had students in the past who A, forgot to join the coils all together, or B, they waited until they got to that, they were all the way done building it, and then they started smoothing out. That's a huge problem. Don't do that. Big reason is because as I go to move it from the fire boxes, where we put all of our ware into before it goes in the kiln, it's a little drying box so that I can make sure the pieces are probably dried out. As I go to move those pieces, if that clay has not been properly sealed together, they will pop and fall and break in half because of just the sheer build of the piece, of a coil piece. If you don't seal those things properly, it's very fragile and it just is not gonna survive getting picked up. As soon as you go to pick it up, it's like a spring, and those coils actually separate, and then they just fall apart as they're dried out pieces of clay at that point, and just falls and smashes, and your piece is broke. All right, so next on my pieces, as I'm going for height, I'm also going to put in little changes in the clay, instead of just doing a straight coil. Here I've made little teardrop shapes, just taking that clay, lumping it around into a little bit of an oval, pinching it at the bottom to get those teardrops, and then smoothing those in place, adding an extra coil just to keep it separates the definition of what's going on in that section, but additionally I put a coil in there to kind of give it another base, so another platform for me to start off on the next section for. Now as you are continuing to smooth these pieces out, make sure, again, I'm reiterating this a dozen times, make sure you're smoothing out those sections as you build, because it just makes your piece stand up a lot better. Now I'll go ahead and be honest with this. I'm doing this piece simply to give my students an example, give you guys an example so you guys know how to build a coil vase, give us some alterations, give us some interesting aspects. But I'm going to trash this one just because for me, for my specifications, I definitely could do more. I built this in, I think about 30-45 minutes. So it's a quick piece. I expect my students to take a few days building their piece. A good piece should take some time. So to put some time, put some effort into it, make a really nice piece. All right, for this section, I'm working on adding coils, pinwheel pieces to the next level of the vase. And notice how I'm stacking the pinwheels on top of each other. Why would I do that? Very simply so that all the pieces are the same size, so that as I add them on and I add that coil around the top, I should still have a flat surface. So that makes sure that I have a nice even bit of clay there to work on for the next series. So that I want to make sure all my pieces are even. Now for the teardrops, I wish I did that because it was just one of those things while I'm working, I was like, hey, I should do this. Stack them on top of each other, make sure they're all the same size. Brilliant idea. But sometimes it just comes later on. So if you like that tip, write it down in your sketch pad. So it's like, hey, something you need to remember. Always use it for a future build. Now notice as I'm rolling out these coils, I do take up that full expanse of the board. If your coils are longer than the board, just break them up into pieces. Notice how you see me break up sections of these coils at a time. The reason I do that is so that you're working on the board. For me, I have masonite tables. And you can't really work clay on a masonite board or a masonite table because the masonite is a non-porous surface. The wood is porous so that it'll have little air pockets. So as the clay is going over and you go over those holes in the board, it still releases the clay. Whereas if you're using it on marble, mason level tables, anything that is that slick, non-porous surface, you're going to have trouble running clay on there. So again, adding another coil to that piece as you bring that piece up, securing all those sides. I'm going to keep saying it every time I see myself do it because I don't want any student to forget that one step. That is crucial and essential for those coil vases. And so for this next section that I'm adding a little more detail, I took just a little piece of clay and folded them in half, make sure it had like a nice U-bend on one side to stack these back and forth. And also, as I did that one coil around, notice how I double backed on it just to try and make that level even as possible. If I was building this over a few days, the next day I would come back and I would use like a stick. I've got these super long paint stirrers and you could tap it lightly on the top with that, kind of like a paddle board, which we do use for our slab pieces when we're building slab pieces, which will be another video that I'm working on. And as the students are working on those, you can tap the clay back into shape with those. Again, the paint stirrers that I use, I get them from Home Depot. I just went up and asked the guy, I said, hey, I'm a teacher, can I just get like a few of these to use in class? He said, here's a stack, take as many as you need. Always love having somebody who's like realize, oh, a teacher, let me help you out. I got something that you could use. Always greatly appreciated. Now, once you added those little U-bends, notice how I did like a vertical and then a horizontal bend to them. Adding some more coils on the top just to finish it off so I get my height up to the scale that I need. Now, also one of those things that all students need to know is that as you're building in clay, if there is a height requirement on it, you should always build above that height requirement. And the reason being is because the clay does shrink in the kiln. Now, those teachers, artists, professional ceramicists that are out there, as you're going to purchasing your clay, most clays does say at the bottom of the description on it, what is the shrinkage factor as it comes out of the kiln. Now, this usually varies. I've seen it as low as I think 6% shrink. All the way up to, I think the most I saw was like 18-19% shrink. And that's something that students as well as professionals, you do need to take into acknowledgement, because you don't want to be have a piece that comes out and you're like, oh, so stoked because you made this really nice piece, and then it just is less than what you initially had set up. So take time, figure out as much as you can about the clay, build super awesome pieces. Now go out there and build some super awesome pieces. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please like, subscribe, share. If you have a comment, question, or just want to say hi, what's going on, drop it down in the comment section below. Other than that, I will see you guys next class. Later, guys.